Hello again, mate. What's your name?
My name's Nick Rado. I'm a stand-up comedian by trade.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Crowdworkcast. My name's Andrew Barnett. Thanks so much for joining me. My guest today, the great Nick Rado. He has returned, as you'll hear in this chat. He's been kicking ass and taking names, and he's been spending a bit of time over in the States, doing a bit of touring over there. So we get right into that chat. Now, if you enjoy Nick and you're not already following him online, do that. Check out his comedy specials. Go to his YouTube page, Nick Rado Comedian. You'll find all his good stuff there. Now, if you want to come see me live next Thursday, as you hear this, that's Thursday the 17th of October. If you're in Sydney, I'm going to be at Happy Endings Comedy Club. The show's called Barney Lives. There is a link to tickets in the description or in my, if you go to my social media, Andrew Barnett Comedy on Instagram, Facebook, wherever you get your social media, you can find tickets to that one. It's going to be a very fun night. So I'd love to see you come along to that. The next night, I'm going to be in Newcastle at the Cardiff RSL Club doing a show with Tommy Dean and Steph Broadbridge. That's going to be a great night. So if you're in Newcastle, you can hit up Cardiff RSL for tickets to that one. I think I've also shared the link on my Facebook. So you can find that there. Other than that, like, subscribe, all that good sort of stuff for the podcast. And go out and see some live comedy. Probably enough chatting from me at this point. Let's rip in. This is my chat with the great Nick Rado. By trade, you went to TAFE for this, did you?
Yeah. Yeah. This is the thing that I fell back on when my admin career fell over.
Yeah, it's good to have skills to fall back on. Hey, do they call it TAFE in New Zealand?
We call it Polytech. So it was like
Polytech.
Polytech. I don't know what the poly stand for, but it was like Polytech was like like a technical university, or it was like one under a university. So it was always like a certificate or a diploma or a trade or like nursing or it was a hairdressing. It was all the stuff that they deemed not worthy of being taught at the university. And so we call it Polytech, but I think they've disbanded all the Polytechs now, and I think it's just I don't even know what they're called now. So I think they're just called online courses.
Oh, mate. So you fell back on stand. So you've obviously been on the podcast. We've talked about your how you got into stand up and everything, a whole bunch.
Yeah,
But you've just got back. So you're based in, just to give people an update, based in New Zealand. You're doing breakfast radio over there in a place called Rodney, which is one of the most beautifully named places in the world.
yeah,
And you've just got back from a big run through the States.
So basically, I've been doing stand up for about 19 years, and it's only in the last sort of 4 years I've decided to go. Oh, I probably should have recorded albums and gone on tour and built a fan base. So
Yeah.
it took me 15 years to figure out that that's the game, and and so I'm just starting to do that now. So I I made a commitment, goal, stupid idea, any of those three things of filming and recording three stand-up comedy specials in 5 years. And the first one I did was in 2021 called On Trend. The second one I did was in 2023 called Live from Jeff's Garage if you're in America. And then the fifth one apparently is due out next year. and
Just coming along.
yeah, well, it's in my mind, I've still got a year to go, but we're in October now, so and by the time you film it and record it, it's probably takes about 3 or 4 months for that to happen. So time's a ticking, and so I was lucky enough to during the pandemic, do some what we call pivoting. I'm not. I think I'm the only person that's ever used that word during the pandemic, and
Yeah, yeah, no. More people probably should have done it.
oh, it just makes a whole lot of sense, to pivot. So I did when a lot of comedians were shying away from Zoom gigs or online shows, and I'm going to admit they weren't the
Mm,
greatest, but they were the only way that I could perform and also earn money for my family during that time. And in during that time, I got friendly and got to know a couple of international stand-up comedians from America. And because my stuff and my comedy is clean, so I don't swear, I'm not political, I don't use sexual references or anything like that. And that's not because of any religious or any kind of moral high ground. It's just purely I just as a white heterosexual male with a beard needed a point of difference, and I and I got chatting to these American comics, and there's like this whole kind of like uh, there's a whole world of people who want that content. So back in the day in America, that's all that you had to be clean to get onto the late night television shows. So Letterman and Leno
mhm.
and Ferguson and Conan and Fallon and all of those different ones, they all they all required you to be clean. And then since sort of cable and YouTube and other different elements like that, you now can you don't have to be clean. You don't have to they don't have to vet your jokes before you go and do it. So I got chatting to these guys and they found out that I was a clean stand up and then they were like, well you should release some albums in America. Here we'll introduce you to a couple of like producers or like record labels, that kind of thing. Because in America they have this thing where they have because it's so big over there, they're constantly in their cars, and so they have this thing called Sirius XM or Sirius Radio or DAB digital radio, where they're constantly in their cars, and it just feeds in these digital channels. So they'll have like a rock channel, 24-hour rock channel, it'll just be rock music. Sometimes they'll have DJs, sometimes they won't. And they do the same thing. They've got like 5 different comedy channels as well, and they just have to constantly, so your stuff could be playing out at 2 in the morning, or it could be playing out at 6 p.m. But they treat it like songs, and so and obviously they need
Mm.
content, and so here this is where I was like, oh, here's an opportunity for me to record something. And at that time, I think in 2021 when I recorded my first album, New Zealand was one of the only few countries that were allowing people just to roam freely in their own country during COVID. And so I had this magic storm of this Venn diagram where it all met that they needed content. We were the only country doing it. I was probably the only comedian in New Zealand that was clean, and also had an hour up their sleeve as well to record because I'd waited 15 years to record it. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
so then they said, so they wanted it, and then I gave it to them, and they were happy with it, and they got a couple of tracks on, and then from there it's just been this. Every couple of years, I now have an outlet to then give it to America and to produce something for America, and they will take it and put it on their radio, and yeah, and so now it's good. And so now, having done that, gotten I've filmed a comedy special over there with a company called Dry Bar, which has got like 8 million followers on Facebook or something, and 2 million on YouTube, and all
Oh,
that kind
wow.
of stuff. Yeah, and so when I recorded that, they released one of my clips, and I they don't tell you this, like they don't tag you in anything. You don't know if you're going well on their specials. And I looked the other day because I had to get a clip for because someone was saying, "Have you got any clips of you doing an American kind of show?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I think I got this a couple of dry bar
Mm.
clips." And I looked on it, and it's had 1.4 million views. And
Holy.
yeah, and I was like, "Oh," and then I was like, "Okay," and then I was like, "Maybe I should go over to America and see what see if anyone recognized me or knows what I'm about." and then hence why I thought I'd dip my toe in. And apparently, they've watched a few of my videos, and I feel like, do you remember that the Sugar Man from? Do you remember that movie, the Saga,
Yeah, yeah.
where he was this homeless guy and he released this album in South Africa, and everyone thought he was dead, and so he became this cult hero. I felt like that in America, where I went over there and people were turning up and coming to my shows, and I was only like playing to 100 and 150, 200 seaters, but they were selling out, and it was good. It was great. And so I opened for a good friend of ours, Turner Sparks, and he did a theater show, and he did really well selling. Pretty much sold out that out, like 350 seater theater. He did amazing.
Wow.
And so yeah, so it was really interesting, really eye opening, and in a nutshell, that's kind of what how it came about, and then also like why I went over, and then I've just got back like literally 2 weeks ago.
Wow. That's that yeah, that's so funny that you had no visibility on that. You're just your career's just been silently building in another
Yeah,
country without you knowing anything about it. And
no,
with music, this is it was so funny in when I was in Melbourne this year, I was having a drink with Tom Stade,
oh
who's
yes,
a
yes, yes.
yeah,
Tom's great.
Canadian comedian and lives in the UK. He's been there a lot of time, and he was telling me then he's like, Barney, you got to get out. They don't
Yeah,
love you at home till the neighbors love you.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I totally agree. It was really quite. It was actually quite nice because I do this thing where I, I stole this phrase from. I didn't steal it, but I borrowed or heard it is probably the better term to use. A comedian in the UK called Imran Youssef. We started out together. He's doing really well in the UK. And he's been on Live at the Apollo, and he's killing it, doing great. But we started out together in the same like open mics and doing little bars in the back streets of nowhere. We're putting on our shows together, and he had this idea where he had this thing called growing in the dark, where he wanted to he wanted to sort of learn all his mistakes and be amazing and be great, but while no one was kind of watching, and learn all the different things. He didn't want to get propelled too early. And so he would do Edinburgh, and he would only do like a half-hour show or a 40-minute show, because to qualify for the best newcomer or best show, I think, had to do a 45-minute show at least, or 50-minute show at least. So he would sort of go under the radar, what he was called growing in the dark, and then propelled himself. He just had this killer show, and then I think even the judges went to him and said, "Mate, can you drop your opening act and just like do crowd work yourself for 5 minutes, and then you'll qualify, and you're pretty much going to guarantee best newcomer." You know what I mean? So it was this great, and I've always thought about that, and so
And when he dropped you as his opening act, Nick, how did you feel?
yeah, yeah. I was like, well, so much for the dark, being in the dark together, and it was pretty scary, to be honest. I thought we were going to be in the dark with it. Yeah, he was the only light in that tunnel for me. And yeah, and so I was thinking about this over there, because I was chatting to my wife. I was like, I kind of it's harder, obviously, with a young family and commitments back home and mortgage and so on and so forth. And I thought to myself, I wish I had have come over here earlier and given it a go earlier, but it wouldn't have worked, because I didn't have the chops, and I didn't have the gear, and I didn't have the wherewithal to be good enough to cut it over there. And I just it had to happen this way. Like, there's just, I could have gone over there, but I just would have been like wouldn't have I would have taken it for granted. And yeah, it kind of, quite often I thought, oh, I wish I had have started stand up earlier. I wish I had have done this earlier. But stand up's one of those things where it just has to happen the way that it happens, because if I had started earlier, it was
Mm.
like, yeah, you may have been, a bit more experienced, but I just had nothing to say. Well, and I didn't know who I was or what I wanted to do. So
That's I could not agree more. I think the same thing. Like I feel like I started stand up really late.
yeah,
Which I look back, I think I was 28, but it's which now I look at as a 28-year-old and go, I'd love to be that young again. But I felt like I was old to be starting stand up. But it was the same thing. Like if I had have tried to start younger, I would have been horrendous, and
Yeah,
it just wouldn't have worked. Like you said, had nothing to say. And that's the thing too, is your stand up's very much your perspective and your law, like
yeah,
draws on your real life experiences. And without those experiences and without that perspective that you've had through living a life,
yeah.
yeah, I don't know, it's not the same thing.
I feel like my stand up is a year and a half behind my life. It takes me about that much time to digest what's happened. And at the time, it's normally quite like I'm really quite either upset or angry or have like quite strong emotions to what's happened. Like I've got this new bit at the moment, which is starting to become like my new closer, which is amazing. But it's about me being the coach of my 9/10-year-old son's basketball team. And
Mm.
it's
Well, if anyone knows swishes, it's you, mate.
yeah, 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 exactly. The Swish capital of I'm the Swisher, the Swishie. I'm not too sure, but as a 5'7" uh, person who's never played basketball, I I'm hopeless, the team's hopeless, and I've been doing it for about 9 to 10 months, and only in the last 2 or 3 weeks have I felt comfortable enough to start writing stand up about it. And a lot of it has just been sharing that just literal true stories of what's happened in the team and other comics and other people laughing really loudly at what's happened. And so it's taken me that long to digest it and process it. And I've tried to write stuff whilst it's happening, but for me, you just don't know how it ends. And so therefore it's kinda it's a bit too raw, I think is what I'm trying to say with it. And so for me, it was actually I was genuinely like, why am I giving up all my time for this? I was genuinely feeling that. And then it's only now with perspective I can kind of laugh at that and see how funny that was. But at the time I was like, this is literally pulling my hair out with how bad this was.
But I think the art of the stand up is not just to tell what happened, it's to give context to it and give some sort of perspective or some sort of
Yeah,
take on
learning,
it.
yeah, moral or
Yeah.
yeah.
And if you don't have that perspective yet, then of course there's nothing to be, there's nothing to be drawn from it. So I'm a bit the same. Like sometimes I need a bit of time to digest what's happened or what's going on, and sometimes that's even with sort of much to my disadvantage. Sometimes that's even on like social trends or whatever. Where
Yeah,
everyone's got a bit
topical,
about
yeah.
something, and
Mm,
then, like, 9 months later, I'm like, "Ah, I've got my angle on it." But it's
yeah.
not until and it's almost, when it's dying, but, I think that without that, like, without I don't know, I'm a bit like you, yeah, it takes me a little while to digest it, to spit it back out, but I think that's also where the best stuff comes from.
Yeah, I do. I think, and now I'm starting to, and people are being quite a lot more authentic with how I'm telling it and what I'm doing, and I'm starting to, man, I've been doing this for 19 years, and I feel like I've only just in the last 5 6 months kind of gone, ah, okay, so this is kind of how it kind of goes. Not even like going, oh, this is it, this is how you do it. I'm just going, all right, okay. This okay, and so I feel like I think I've said this to you before, but I feel like for the last 19 years I've been playing comedy by ear, and I haven't really sort of learned the fundamentals or learned the theory of it. And I've really gone back to basics quite in the last 6 to 9 months. And I feel like it's really helped me because I've understood why the joke works and why it's funny rather than, oh, I just trust your instincts on why it's good or why it's funny. And has really helped me then take a story or take a real life experience like coaching my son's basketball team and then put it through the theory generator of like, well, how can you approach this, what angles can you take on this, and then really, yeah, spit it out and still in authentic and genuine form, but in a joke, stand up, easy to get, easy punchline way. And yeah, I think yeah, it's starting to. I'm excited about the new hour. I was so tentative to write this new hour because I thought the last hour I did, there's no way I could write anything better. And for months, I just didn't write anything. And it's only in the last probably a month, 6 weeks, where not only have I think, oh, I've got the 20 or 25 of the new hour, but I think it's going to be way better than the last one. So yeah, it's a process, but I think having going back to the America thing, having that deadline, the comedy festival, the New Zealand Comedy Festival used to be my deadline, but then now recording it and putting it in like that's it, the time to move on from it. Yes, you can do it at corporates, or yes, you can do it, occasionally to bring those jokes back if you really have
Mm.
to. But it's now going, all right, you've done that, you've recorded that, time to move on, and yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one, which is in let's just say June. Let's throw that time frame out. Yeah,
Yeah, it is, but it's like I don't know about you. I'm in a similar spot where there's like I've set myself the goal of recording that many albums or whatever, but I'm right in that point now where I'm enjoying writing again.
yes,
Like
yes,
it's not the it doesn't feel like it's hanging over me as much as all of a sudden I've got thoughts that are generating themselves. I'm like, okay, now I can write this into a bit and then get it
yeah.
working, and
I
that
feel
fun part of the process.
yeah. And so for me, like having this coaching the basketball story now, for me, as someone who's done this for 19 years now I've got the crux of what this hour could be, and I can because I've got this really funny story that I can weave in and out of. Now I know how to do that. I'm excited about that. It's kind of like now I've finally got the picture of the puzzle, and I've got the border, and now I just have to fill in the middle. And so and because I've got the outline of this new hour, or this these chunky bits that I can get into, and knowing that it's funny and knowing that it's like it ends satisfactorily, yeah, with satisfaction, then there's so much. Now it's just trying to like, yeah, put all the pieces together like a puzzle. And sometimes as well, like a puzzle, you just get stuck, and one piece just opens up the whole board. And that's what have found with this basketball story, where I feel like this is the one piece I'm like, well, that's the sky done now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's it. But it's funny how that works. Like it just, I don't know about you, but I find when I'm writing, ideas come in chunks. Like they come
Yeah.
in a big clump. I'll have a bunch of ideas, and then nothing will happen, and then and it feels really hard to write or whatever. Then something unlocks a whole another bunch of thoughts, and all of a sudden you got a bunch more material.
Yeah.
Um,
And yeah, and a little trick that I've found as well, and this has only helped me by putting hours together, is I have like this big sort of, I don't know, like black cardboard. It's not even cardboard. It's kind of just this black board. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be that. It can be post-it notes, can be whatever. But I put the those little 2x4 cards and stuff, and I just write every single bit out in terms of like what I would put them as a set list, and what their headline is called. So it could be like, dogs, kids, trip to the dairy, yeah, trip to the grocery store, whatever the thing is, and I put
the
them all on
dairy. Go on, make
yeah,
it Kiwi.
the dairy, and so flip, jandals and chili bins and stuff. So just your standard set list, the Kiwi set list, and
Yeah, yeah.
I put them up, and then I go like, how many family jokes have I got? How many uh like food bits do I have? How many whatever? And so then I put them all in, and then I've got, okay, so I've got 7 completely separate bits on like going to the grocery store or food or whatever it is. And then I go, but I've got this amazing story about how, I don't know, me and my kids or me and my family, or having an awkward conversation, or whatever the thing is of the story, where it can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be in the place that it happened in. But it's now, well, well, now if I put that fight or embarrassing moment or that embarrassing interaction with that other human being, if I put that in the grocery store, all of a sudden I've got this 20-minute bit on the grocery store that's weaved into the story of this, which I know is going to be funny and has an ending. But I've turned this like minute and a half, 2-minute story now into this whole 15, 20-minute piece on the grocery store. And that is fantastic. And when you're doing an hour show, but what I will say is, has tripped me up. And I have to then now come back on myself a lot, because I'm doing this American thing of albums and tracks, and and the way that American style of stand up comedy is bits. And so it's the 2 minute bit, it's 3 minutes bit, it's a 4 minute bit. You know, you can get away with a 5, 6, 7 minute bit on gun control or whatever if you're Jim Jeffries or whatever. But because they're playing them out in these separate tracks, I have to then be wary of that. So, but it's also good because now I've got these big long stories which go along as this one bit, but now I have to think about it, and this is kind of apt and of the time. But I remember Transformers, when you get the Transformers and you build them together and they'd make Optimus Prime, or you put them together and they'd make Megatron. So individually, the
Yep.
jokes have to stand alone as their own Transformer and be good enough for the kids to play with. But together, they make this amazing, fantastic Optimus Prime Megatron of a joke. And but equally, you have to let them stand alone by themselves. And so that's been the new elevation and new uh, evolution of my stand up, where I used to just go, well, I've got this massive 20-minute story now. That's great. I can just do a little bit of crowd work and then launch into the 20-minute bit. And then in a live scenario, that comes across amazing. But it's quite lazy because I know it's always going to end in the crescendo. So the build up, it doesn't need to have a joke every 15, 20 seconds. But it can have a 2 or 3 minute lazy, ambling story intro,
Charming, interesting.
charming, style over substance, that kind of stuff, because you know it's going to end well. But now this is like, every bit has got to be like, standalone, great, funny, and now it's like, yeah, every sort of 2, 3 minutes, I'm hoping that the audience will go, oh, well, that's the end of that bit. But then they're like, but wait, there's more. And then you sort of go on, hopefully to the end where they just applaud and go, oh my gosh, that's great. That's fantastic. So it's definitely takes me longer. It's definitely, I've got 3 or 4 different hats on in terms of trying to like be a stand-up comedian that's funny and that's clean, that is paying the bills, trying to build an audience, but also has to write internationally as well. So I've put a lot of restrictions on myself, and it's taken me a lot longer to get there. But and I don't know because I haven't got through through it there yet. But I can see the path where it will work, and that's the main thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's so, impressive to hear. It's funny how you said when you're constructing all your bits and you can put them into it like a whole story. I remember years ago, the very first time I ever did a cruise ship, and I
Mm,
was doing the carnival, and you need the 5 separate half hours. And I remember I was actually in New Zealand because I was going from New Zealand, flying out to meet the ship in Noumea. And
yeah,
I remember I had a day off before I had to fly, and I just sat down and I wrote out every joke I had ever written. And I've still got the notebook around here somewhere.
yeah,
And but I remember writing it out, and I put a C next to them for the clean. and then
Oh,
or
wow.
could
Yeah.
go in the kids show, or you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because those shows aren't just clean, but they have to, you've got actual kids in the audience, so that you got to be throwing them something accessible enough that they don't get bored and walk out. But I realized there was about like 4 or 5 different themes I wrote to. Like, there was stuff about having kids, there was stuff about being married, there was stuff about, um, I was a bit fascinated with changing tech and that sort of stuff. And even to this day, there's still these very broad themes that I still write to, but and
Yeah.
the bits are completely different, and the
Mhm.
approach isn't always the same. But it's amazing how, like, if you go broad enough themes, pretty much everything you write will fall into a smaller number of themes than you think.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I think, yeah, going off the back of that as well, it's something I learned from a few bigger comedians. There's no like the thing is with like hack gets thrown around a lot, and I get it, and I know that, and it's for me. I'd like to almost take that word and not. It's not hack. It's almost lazy. I feel like it's
I
lazy rather than
I
hack.
was about to say the same thing. It's not, there's no hack premise, there's no hack topic. There's just lazy approaches to stuff.
Yes. Yeah, and I feel like and I learned this from some of the like if you look at some of the big, comics who are killing it, they're all talking pretty much the same stuff, but they're just writing that extra 15, 17% that all of us would just go, well, that'll do. And you got to admire that because and that's why we do admire it because they've put in the extra 17, 20% that we didn't think to put in. Some of us like don't know that there is another 20% in there, which is quite a lot of the time. But some of us do know that it's potentially. Sorry, there's like dogs barking. You probably hear that in the background. But yeah. So I think uh, yeah, going back to those different subject matters and things like that. Because the more, and this is what I love about stand up is that you will go you will write out all those different elements. And I bet you if you were to go do show again, you would have so much more stuff that would filter in that you could add to the thing. So all of a sudden, those PG shows, it's weird those carnival shows because it's not kid shows because people think it's kid entertainment, but it's kind of not. It's basically kids are in there,
No.
nanas are in there, and the parents are in there. So it's just got to be like it's not like you're juggling or doing magic tricks or anything like that. It's more you just have to not, yeah, swear or do political stuff. You could probably do, but they just wouldn't get it. But like sexual reference, anything that like if you felt uncomfortable sitting with your nana, your mum, or whatever, or your child, the other way around as well. And so it's kind of those. I think it's really not important, but I do think it's good to know what you can do. So if
It's
there is a
it's
yeah.
a it's a good challenge. It's a good
Yeah.
challenge. I used to approach it like, I my approach was to be throwing enough, um, very accessible stuff. I used to say the basic thing I used to say, you just gotta say "poo" and "wee" enough that you keep the
Yeah,
little
yeah,
kids
yeah.
entertained while you tell
Yeah,
jokes they don't understand to their parents and grandparents.
totally. Yeah, and you do this very well, I think. You include like another way you can do it is just include them. You can just go, "You'll know about this, kids," or "Don't you hate hate it when your parents do this," or whatever. And it's kind of basically you're just going, "Hey, hey, 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 listen to
Yeah,
this," and
yeah.
it buys that thing. And it's kind of like when you have the troubled table, the stag do, or the people that have had a few much to drink or whatever. You're not making it about them, but you're including them, and you're sort of wrangling them. And I yeah, and I think people shouldn't if they are to do one of those shows, or if they are looking to do stuff that's a little bit more either you got a corporate gig, or even if it's just like a crowd that's just what they're not into dirty stuff, and everyone's on a lineup and everyone's doing dirty stuff and they're not going for it, or it's like 6 o'clock in the afternoon or evening or whatever, and it's or it's a midday show or whatever in a festival or whatever the scenario is. It's quite often and quite nice to know that what you've got in your tool belt, and Yeah, but equally for me, I've got to do the same thing. So I sometimes do shows where it's like a late night show, or they've paid for, like, it's like a proper, R18 show or whatever it is. But my thing with that is I just do. So I did this recently. I think I was on a cruise ship. It was Royal Caribbean. I had to do 45 minutes clean, and then I had to do a half hour like adults only show, and people would come to the adults only show. And so they did, and both shows went really well. But both of the shows were clean. Like it wasn't, there was no difference. And so what I try and do with that now is when I go into a club or whatever, I just have to make sure that I can follow anybody with my
Mm.
stuff, and it's still funny. And people go, "Oh yeah," and by the way, it was this. So I don't really go out of my way to go, "Hey, I'm clean. I don't sort of set that as a thing. I kind of let people know because sometimes people want to buy a ticket to it. But to be fair though, it's actually more detrimental for people wanting to go along to a clean comedian anyway, just because of the lazy writing that has happened before. But
Especially in places like, Australia and New Zealand where
yeah,
smaller market,
absolutely.
people generally think of comedy as something a bit naughty, bit dirty, bit whatever. So, "Oh, mate, if he's just" there is that reaction of like, "Oh, we don't just wanna see some guy who's scared to swear." It's like, "No, no, no, he's not
Yeah.
scared to swear, he just doesn't need to."
Well, yeah, but it's also, again, going back to my original statement, is like I didn't do this because I wanted to do it. If I
W
could make a living off, because my original stuff, like I used to close with an oral sex joke. It was my closing joke, and it went amazing. It was great, and to drop that was really quite hard because it was like, well, that's my best joke, and
Mm,
I can't. Yeah, it was really hard, and so I just needed a point of difference. I found like I was like, where, like, there was more money in corporates. I was struggling in corporates. I was like hitting and missing in terms of my pub and club shows because I was mostly clean, but then I would go into this sort of more dirtier stuff, and it was a bit of a, like, change a gear without a clutch. It was just a bit jolty, and so I kind of, when I made the call on it, it was, yeah, I was like, this will help me in corporates because I don't have to think about it. I
mm.
will train my stuff so that when it is in a corporate environment, it works in the pubs and clubs and stuff anyway. So that's fantastic. And then, yeah, and then it was just like, oh, and a bonus is it's a point of difference so that people can put me on and know that it's not going to be um, the same as the comic that just was on before me. So yeah.
Mate, but like I said, I don't think of you necessarily first off as a clean comedian. Like it wasn't. I remember the first time we ever worked together. I don't know if you were doing 100% clean then, but that wasn't my takeaway. It was just, oh, this guy's really funny. He's got
Oh,
bits.
thanks, man. Yeah, yeah. I was. I think we were in the Gold Coast. I know. I wasn't.
Yeah,
I definitely wasn't. So that would have been 2016.
16 maybe.
Yeah, 16, 17. Yeah, I didn't
Mm.
go like until about maybe 2000 and maybe 18, 19. So there's bits. There's like gala performances, like late night television performances of me, not clean. And so it's kind of this weird thing where there was a moment there where I was like saying I was a clean comic, but every time you looked me up, it was like it definitely wasn't. And, and so it was, but now I've got more stuff in the back
Mhm.
catalog than now I
Got
can just
those big
out.
dry bar clips now, mate.
Mate, now I've got those, yeah, 25 minutes of non-stop dry bar stuff. So
Mate,
yeah, but I don't know, and it's kind of a thing where it's like I don't even know if this is, you know, I never say never. Like if a bit is needs to be something that it's more, I don't know where the evolution's going to go. Maybe I do the full circle and come back around to where I started. I'm not too sure, but at the moment, I'm really enjoying the challenge, and I'm really enjoying the fact that not many people are doing it as well. Because even in
yeah.
America, there's not that many doing it, even though there's a lot more doing it, but there's not. Yeah, it's not as many as you think, and so even
Well, It's also too, like, I think, like, with the I think there's just more people doing stand-up than ever before, but everyone goes through that first phase of your stand-up where it's much easier to be dirty than anything else
Yeah,
because it feels like you're getting a laugh from saying the shocking thing or whatever.
yeah,
Um, so I think that you're like that in terms of the point of difference, yeah, it's well, there's a reason it's also I think it's maybe the more restrictions you put on yourself, the harder it is, but then also I think, that old pressure builds diamonds. Like, the the best stuff when we were working at Fox together, some of the best stuff we ever came up with was because we had an idea, but then we were told, "No, that's not gonna work. You can't do that." And then we had to problem solve our way around it,
totally.
and it forced you to come up with something better.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, there was some great stuff that we wrote there, and it was yeah. I do think that it's almost harder to write with an open page,
Yeah.
and
The
yeah,
blank page is more intimidating than here's a dot point you have to write something about. To
I
me, anyway.
oh absolutely. And now I'm at the point now where, especially now that I've gone back to the theory element, and I've got these filters of why a joke works, and what different tactics are for a joke as well. Like I feel like I'm confident enough that if you put any kind of thing in front of me, I would go, yeah, I can definitely write something about that in my style or in someone else's style. I'd be confident enough to do that. Whereas before, even I'm talking about, I wrote topical television for like 6 7 years, and
That's what
I
I was gonna say.
yeah,
You that was basically your job for a long time,
yeah,
but now you feel more confident now that you're out of that.
totally. It was yeah, and because I was doing it by ear, and I think that's why it was great learning for me because it told me the importance of getting to the joke quickly, and it told me the importance of setup and punchline, and it told me the importance of writing for somebody else, and it taught me all of those things. And but also now looking back as well, that year and a half of digesting it and understanding it now, I really understand the importance of character, and I would have totally changed because I had TV appearances on there, and I struggled on there because I didn't know who I was, and I would easily be swayed into whatever the vibe of the show was. So if it was super filthy, I'd go there. And if it was super surreal, I would go there. And I was very adaptable and a kind of a chameleon when it came to that. But it didn't do anything for me being remembered or being invited back onto the shows because they didn't understand. They didn't know where to put me. And I was quite frustrated at first because
Mm.
I was like, oh, I'm funny. I'm funnier than these guys. I can write as good a joke. That was my joke or whatever, uh, but then now looking back, it was like, well, there's no real clear who is this guy? And so if I was to go back on there, I would be the clean guy. But I would probably go one step
Yeah.
further where I'd pull people up on how dirty they went. And I would probably even go and pretend to be religious or wear a collar or something so that it would be absolutely clear as day to know who I was and what I'm about. And so you
Mm.
yeah, and so I feel like now again, going through all that process, I'm like, yeah, it was hurtful that I didn't get on, but I get it now, and I probably wouldn't put myself on it either, knowing what I know now.
It's it's funny how it's back to that perspective thing though. Like now with a bit of distance, you have perspective on the whole experience, and
Yeah.
you can having done both sides of that TV work, you can put yourself in the position of the person whose job it is to decide who's going on,
So
and
that's
look at you from that perspective.
exactly, and I think that's why I worked so well over in Australia with you guys, and I sort of felt like my place is because you gave me a character, and it was this overseas Kiwi guy that didn't really understand or wasn't really overwhelmed or even with that made a bigger deal of how important Shane Warne was, or Adam Gilchrist, and actually was trying to cut them down. And I could do all of the jokes that you guys couldn't do as Australians, but were still funny jokes. But the element of me saying that Daniel Vittori is a better spin bowler than Shane Warne is hilarious
Yeah.
because the statistics and everybody knows that it's the
Reality.
the reality, yeah, everything was about it was ridiculous. But because I had that clear character, I think that's why it went so well. Because for me personally, I just sort of deadpanned it a little bit more than I would normally do. But all the jokes were still, I still believed that Vittoria was a fantastic spin bowler, and we didn't like Shane Warne, and so, but yeah, it was. I feel like now looking back on that, that's why it worked so well, and we gelled as a three together
Mm.
as well because I think we all had clear, defined roles.
Yes, and it was that thing, like, I think too, the you that almost the innocence to that character you had of you just, like, stuff like stuff had never occurred to you. My favorite joke I think we ever did that you delivered was the, Middlesex Panther
Oh yes,
with
because
Adam
that was a joke
Gilchrist.
that was a joke that you'd pitched. Like you pitched it like at the beginning of the season, and I think it was like maybe 4 or 5 episodes in potentially,
Mm.
and it was how are we going to get this away? Yeah, but
Yeah,
you tell the story.
but it
Yeah.
was perfect. It was perfect because it suited your character of misunderstanding things or having an
Mm,
alternate,
mm,
like,
yeah,
interpretation of how things were. And yes, so because Adam Gilchrist, I think he played for the Middlesex Panthers, which are now just Middlesex. They dropped the Panthers,
yeah,
but your misunderstanding was he played for Middle, and
yeah,
they were called the Sex Panthers.
yeah,
Um, which is just objectively funny, but, like,
yeah.
it wasn't credible coming from James or my
No,
mouth
yeah,
either. It had to come from your because we and it worked so well because your character had misunderstood or got things wrong so much or
yes,
just had that Kiwi perspective that it was believable that we could do more with your persona there, like, in terms
yeah,
of those sort of jokes of you getting things wrong for good
yeah.
reason.
And I think that that would have potentially, if it was just you and James, it would have you would definitely be the one to deliver that joke. But because it
Mm.
was that one step even more because it was from a Kiwi, it made it because
Yes.
it still you still would have made it pop. But I remember because it was such a great joke, I was saying to you, I can't take that, I can't deliver that joke. That's your joke. You made that's a great joke. And so I remember having fighting with it. But I also remember there was other elements and stuff, and other elements of the show was like, oh no, you deliver that one, Barney, because coming from you, that's the best way to deliver that.
Mm.
And so it was, yeah, I really enjoyed that time. And then looking back at it, but during it, I was like, yeah, that's funny, but I have no idea why this is working.
Well, but it was good too because because you and I were down that end of the desk, so it was
Yes,
often my job to not pull you back, but go like be the Nick. What are you talking about?
totally.
And to
Oh,
like to point out when you got things wrong. It was very and I loved that role like because I was James was very much the straight man I was then, and then you were just another element
it was
out,
another
like you were
silly,
another
yeah,
step down silly. It's almost like we went sillier as the desk went on.
yeah, and now that we talk about it, like, of course it would work. But
Yeah,
when we were in it, I'm like, because that's what I'm talking about by playing by ear. We knew that it was funny, and
mm,
we knew that
yeah,
we would go out there and have a great show. But now I think objectively we could remake that and redo it. Not so much better. I think, yeah, well, of course, so much better, but also just every single time we would just do it because we know exactly why it works and why it works,
yes.
and we would be able to work more productively and more streamlined because we just would instantly know if it would go through which funnel or which channel to make it the
Which yeah,
most.
which voice it needed to like yeah, which element needed to it needed to come out of to maximize the funny, which is exactly what that, especially once we had the picture picture of you in the in the mascot
Oh, and
costume.
the
I don't know
Sex
if you
Panther
remember.
costume. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, it was, me and like a panther, like a onesie
like a
panther,
Pink Panther. Yeah,
like a pink panther, but on the outside was lingerie.
yeah.
And it was me doing like the Austin Powers kind of like, just like with my one leg up and two
Oh,
hands in like in a rowl position.
yeah.
So yeah, it was funny and still, well, I think before my dry bar special, one of the most viewed clips of my stuff, which is when you're a clean comedian, like the Sex Panther joke is your best, is your is your best watch video. It's taken a little while to divert people away from it.
Oh, that's yeah. So tell me a little bit about so whereabouts in the States did you go? Like, tell me a bit, like, and like the difference, because I'm a big believer American audiences just seem different.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
how is it, like, how much did you have to adjust stuff? What are we talking?
So I started in the UK, so I always had to do, like, when now you understand stuff and we didn't really know why you were doing it. So in the UK, I would always say I'm from New Zealand, and I'd have to do a joke about New Zealand because they couldn't concentrate as an audience member until you said that, till you put out the obvious thing in the room. So, like, if you're, I don't know, if you've got a funny hat on, or if you are of a certain weight or a certain size, or you've got an arm missing or a leg missing, or whatever the thing is that's different about you, you almost, as much as you hate it, you have to do a joke about it because in the audience's mind, they can't concentrate until they get that question answered. And for me, it was like, why he sounds Australian? I wonder if he's from Australia, or where's the accent from? Is he from XYZ or
Mhm.
whatever? I think he's from New Zealand. And until I like open with that, it sets them at ease. It answers the question for them, and then and as much as it kills me to do it because I don't want to do New Zealand jokes at all. I just want to get up and do my stuff. But you kind of have to do it just to get the plate cleansed, uh, and palate cleansed rather than the palate cleansed. And so that's what I had to do. I had to go out there, and it's different in that respect. So you would have to go out there and say, "I'm from Australia." I would advise anybody else to go and do that wherever you're from, or wherever if you sound different, you should go and do that, and just have a
Mm.
quick 15, 20, 30-second joke. And I think the joke I wrote for the over there. Oh, so I was doing some shows, some smaller shows, like just some warm up shows for the theatre show, and I did the show in the backyard. It was like only 50 people in there. And I would just do stuff like, New Zealand, this is a sellout show in New Zealand. This is an arena show,
Yeah.
all this kind of stuff, all the small town stuff. And I did a joke about how I'm so impressed with how everything's so big here. Like your military so big. Like in New Zealand, our navy is Jason Momoa from Aquaman. And like they would go, "Oh, that's good," and and like our security. I think it was another joke I did. Our security. Oh, we don't have like intelligence or something like that. You guys have intelligence. Our intelligence is a Ring doorbell we installed in Fiji, and so little things like that where they just get off the. It's just like, okay, it's small. It's New Zealand, and he's here. And then from then I could then just do anything. I could just launch into my stuff. But it honestly took about a minute and a half to 2 minutes. And because America is so grateful for you coming and making that effort, they also then go, he must be good because he's come all this way. And I in America as well, they're very big on your credits. So because I'd open and like here in New Zealand and in Australia, they just say my name and just bring me on or whatever. But in America, they're like, so where would people know you from? And I hated it at first, but then I was chatting to a comic backstage in the green room, and I said, "Why do you guys do that? Um, why do you why do you big out your credits and sort of almost extrapolate them so big that if you've been on, like, if you're a dead person on CSI Miami, like, you say that as a credit, why do you do that? And I said, well, because in America there's so many people here and there's so many people doing stand up, you have to tell the audience why they should listen to you. And so it's important for them to do that because the way they do stand up, there's no break, there's no real even headliner sometimes. It's just comedian after comedian after comedian. You don't know if they've been pulled out of a hat or whether they've paid to play or whether they're actually like been doing comedy for 20 years. So you need to sort of differentiate yourself from the pack. And so how you do that is with credits and and appearances and so on and so forth. So for me, when I went on, because I'd opened for Nate Bargatze, Chelsea Handler, and I'd had my dry bar special, they were like, and he's from New Zealand. They were like, oh, well, we should listen to this guy because
Mm.
those are big names in America. It's very hard to get to open for those people. And they don't need to know that, it was just because I was in New Zealand. I was only one of the only clean comics to, to pick from. They don't need to know that. But yeah. So hold on a second. Hey Billy, sorry, can you just take the audio just inside? Yeah, I'm just doing a call. Thank you. Um, and yeah, so they would yeah. So that's so again, it's an understanding. I'm like, okay, now I understand that. Oh, it is actually a good thing for me to do that because now I can separate myself from the pack. And
Mm.
so once I did that, it got me some kudos. And then once I established that I was funny with my little New Zealand jokes, and then when I launched into my material, they were just like, "Oh my gosh, this guy is amazing!" Because it's I've had however many years of material to go wherever. It's clean, it's funny, it's relatable, it's international. I didn't have to change anything. So all of those parameters that I put on myself early on, or in the last 4, 5, 6 years especially, all came into fruition into this one little tour where I didn't even have to think about anything. I could just have fun and play in the moment. And so far, and in fact, I did that coaching the basketball team bit as a new bit, and I could have fun and do that because I was able to play and I could like just be in the moment and just sort of play around with that because I knew that I had all this other stuff in the background that I could pull out at any time. But
But
in
it
a
also probably that bit leans into their probably preconception of Kiwis aren't good at basketball anyway.
oh,
So then
absolutely.
they're so so used to they know so much the elements of what it takes to be good at basketball. 5'7"'s probably not cutting it.
Totally.
Then he's also a Kiwi and
Yeah.
he's never played basketball. So that's all pile it's the perfect place for you to lean in and find all the funny points for that.
Well, exactly, and basketball's so big there, and
Mm.
so like they're so good, and even like the people who are not good are good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and everyone knows, like, the the soccer mom or the soccer mom would probably coach better than I could coach, and probably knows more about basketball than I do. And so, yeah, the absurdity was they just loved it. They thought it was so funny that this super short guy who'd never played basketball was the coach, and over these useless kids, and they just yeah, it's without going into the bit, they just really enjoyed that. But all that hard work and all that growing in the dark kind of made for the American tour just to sort of shine and just to be like, okay, I'm here, and I'll just do as much as I can. Now, in saying that, I did play. So the first one I played, so I land in San Francisco, and I go play in the Bay Area. This place called what is it called? Mill Valley. It's Mill Valley. It's in the Bay Area, and it's this super like rich suburb of San Francisco. It was Robin Williams. It was at the Throckmorton Theatre, Robin Williams's home theatre. So Robin Williams, when he was alive, would pop
Wow.
down and do bits and played the night that I play, like constantly. He would pop down and be in the green room, and there was like, and then he would go on stage and he'd do his thing, and constantly go down there and pop down and do that. And it was just like that was my first gig was doing this theatre, and I just landed that day. So I'd just done a 12-hour flight. I left New Zealand on the Tuesday night at 10 p.m. and arrived in America at midday Tuesday the same day. And so my time, so I'd gone back in time and then drove around, had some Mexican food, which is a very brave call before the first gig in a foreign land, especially
Coming
Northern
off a
California.
flight.
Yeah, exactly. So it was like Northern California Mex-Tex type situation, and then had to go up and do, and then they only gave me 8 minutes, and I was like, this is a long way to go. And I'm used to doing, an hour or at least half hours,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
even 20s, even 10s. But they gave me 8 minutes, and I was like, ugh, okay. Then went up and did really great. And then so then for the next kind of the amount of time, I'd just get more time and that. And so then my next show was, and this was, by the way, this was during the first debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, the one where he talked about they're eating all the dogs, and so that was the same night as all that was going on, and so this is where it was kind of like my stuff has to be great because that's I should really be talking about that. I should really be like having a bit about
Yeah.
that, but the fact that I didn't do it and I did my stuff and they really loved it and they thought, oh, you should do more stuff. It's sort of testament to like how hard I write and not being lazy with writing.
But going back to the, taking a while for things to have like perspective, you'll have a great bit about that next time you're back in the
Oh,
States. So,
absolutely.
mate,
Well,
I
yeah.
I just worked out a line about that first Biden debate, just before the Biden-Trump debate,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that just in time for Kamala Harris to basically take over.
Amazing.
So,
Yeah. Oh, it's yeah. It was
topicals.
it's topical and yeah. I'm all about putting the time in for stuff that is gives me the most benefit out of it and topical jokes. Having worked for topical TV for 7 years and being the head writer for it, it is the hardest amount of work for the least amount of payback. And yeah, it's
100%.
yeah. So I'm wary to do all that stuff, but yeah. So then I went to the next show was the next show. Oh, hold on a second. Bill, hold on, Billy. You can do this if you want. Oh, okay. That's okay. Oh, yeah. It's hot. Oh, okay. Billy, can you give this to him? Sorry, just school holidays at the minute, and good girl, Billy. Well done. Oh yeah. So the second one was a country club. I don't know if you guys have like I don't even know what the equivalent would be in New Zealand. Basically, think of like the richest people you can think of, and they all hang out at a golf course, and the club rooms is just the most immaculate, beautiful thing that you've ever seen in your life. I went in there and there was like in the toilets was just this big, massive, huge space that was kind of almost like a hair salon place, but it was just myself in the bathroom, and they had cologne, they had toothbrushes, they had mouthwash, they had everything that you wanted to be there. And the thing, they had hand towels that were freshly like folded in a certain way, and it was called the Fountain Grove Country Club, and it was a sold out, I think, 150 seater, and they like just money was no object to them, and I had to go on and do like open for Turner, our good friend Turner, and he had to do an hour and he did great, but I had to go out there, and they can afford any kind of show in the world, and they've seen the best of the best. And so
Yeah.
when the guy who introduced one of the guys from the country club, he so he this okay, this is a funny story. I haven't told this. So he was like going to us at backstage. He was like, "Hey, so I'm thinking of doing this joke before I introduce you on, Nick. What do you think about this?" And we're like, and I was like, I'm fine because anything that, even if it falls on its ass, I'm fine with it because I can like pull it back and go, oh, what about that guy? But he did this thing about, he did this thing where for whatever, I don't even, still don't even know to this day why he does it, but he was the one that, it's so hot out in Northern California. It was like 40, 42, 43 degrees. And he would do this thing called, he would put out frozen grapes at all the holes. And I don't know why, but people really enjoyed the frozen grapes, so that they must eat them or they must like,
Yeah.
suck on them or whatever the thing was. Anyway, so he's new to the club. He's only been there for 6, 7 months, and so he got this T-shirt called like called grape. It's called Grape Bitch on it. Got Grape Bitch, and then I think it had like hands off my grapes or something like that. Anyway, so he's going to say that I'm new to the club, and but everyone's known for something. But you guys might know me, and he's going to rip open his shirt, and it would have "grape bitch" or "hands off my grapes," whatever the phrase was on it. And so so we're like, okay, cool, all right. So then he he comes on, and his shirt's already open, so you can kind of see the grape, like the joke's already been like thing
Revealed.
revealed.
There's no pullback.
There's no pullback. There's no callback, and so he kind of real serious and quite monotone with his react, like with his intro, and then he kind of goes, anyway. So you most of you, everyone's known on this show for something, but this is what you guys know me for, and he sort of like nonchalantly pulls the thing across and reveals it. They all laugh a little bit, but it's not anything major, whatever.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you the story and then I'll tell you how it went. So then he pulls that back. So we find out later. We go, the show goes brilliantly. Everyone does well. It's all brilliant. And we find out later, and we go, anyway, by the way, mate, hey, well done on the T-shirt thing. He goes, yeah, I was really distracted, and it didn't go as well as I thought it would, and I wanted to give it more, but anyway, I had this scenario that happened before the gig, and we're like, what happened? He goes, well, one of the chefs apparently was a little bit handsy with the waitresses, and I had to dismiss him just before I went on. So I had to say, you can't come back here. I had an HR dismissal, had to let him go. And that was right before I had to introduce you on to the thing. I was like, dude. And he said, yeah, but the problem is that as that was happening, as I was talking to the person, I was having to put the T-shirt on and then do up my do up my shirt.
Oh no.
So he's saying to the chef, "You can't do that. You
You can't be inappropriate.
can't be inappropriate." And he's got "hands off my grapes, grape bitch" as a T-shirt on the thing. As he's telling the chef that you got to get out of here because you're this is an HR case in the moment. And me and Turner are like, "This is so funny. This is such a funny story." Anyway, so he comes on, and so the audience laugh, and then but they're dead, like they're absolutely like there's no energy in the room, and so I kind of like go, all right, well I have to then now switch it up and like use what's the toolbox that I can use. It's not about the material at this stage. It's about like setting up the room, and it's about
Yeah.
getting them going, getting them engaged, getting some energy in the room. So I had to just sort of almost like restart the gig, compare it, and then go into material. So I only did about 10 minutes worth of material, but I did 10 minutes of like crowd work and getting them going and so on and so forth. So again, when I'm like, oh, I wish I'd have done this 20 years ago, just come over here and rocked it like I did there. But there's no way I could have done it because I didn't have the
Yeah.
skill set, didn't know to think on the fly after someone's just in this weird show before me, to then be able to have the wherewithal to go, I know what this room needs. This room needs this. And I even turned to Turner just before he said my name. I said, Turner, I'm just gonna get the crowd going here. I'm gonna MC it. And he knew instantly what I meant by that. And then from there it was like, and the show went great, and that was fantastic. So then it was there. Then we did the theater, the Sophia Theater, the B Street Theater in Sacramento. That was amazing. It was just doing like a theater gig. It was fantastic. And then I went to Santa Cruz, and then I did 3 nights of probably like I've sat through some really bad comedy before. And I've been on some awful open mics before, but there was back to back to back terrible comment. Like the first room was not even a room; it was outside. Two out of the three shows that I did were outside. There was no walls, and it
No,
was
you need
cold.
walls.
And it was a cold. It was like doing it in like 18 degrees, 19 degrees outside. It wasn't like winter, but it was like pretty cold. The first one was in like if you're in like a mall, and it was like the courtyard in a mall, and I was like, all right, we're doing comedy here. The second one was at a place which was like this punk underground cave. It was like it reminded me of Edinburgh. It was like this dark, seedy, like no one can see anybody type show. That was actually okay. That was the best show. That was actually really good. That was fine. But the comedy in there was a guy that drove there 2.5 hours to do 7 minutes, and he was so wasted that he didn't tell any jokes. And they had like a live band playing, like a live double bass and a drummer playing. And halfway through a 7 minute set, he just went, "I'm going to play the drums," and then started to play the drums, but couldn't play the drums. Like there's just like man,
Oh, no.
yeah. But played for 4 minutes, and and like he goes, "I drove 2.5 hours for this," and then and then went back into the crowd, and I was like, huh? And then yeah, I did a show. Oh, there was another show I completely forgot about. I completely blanked on. I was supposed to be the headliner for the show, and they were going to pay me like cash to do the gig. And yeah, lovely. Turn up to the show, and then they go, "Oh, are you the headliner?" I was like, "Yeah," and they said, "Oh, well, we can't have you as a headliner. Why is that?" Because all the money that we're donating from this show is going to one of the comics' mum, because her house burnt down last week, and so we're doing a fundraiser. And I'm like, all right, so I guess my headlining fee is donating to the mum's house, and they're like, yeah. I was
Yeah.
like,
To some comic you've never met's
never
mum.
met. Yeah, totally. And then I was like, all right, give it up for house fires, I guess. And then,
That
yeah. And
is
so, anyway, so I lost like some money off that. And then, so that was kind of good for in terms of the whole spectrum of what America is, because it was like Ghost of
yeah.
Christmas, past, present, future. It was like, oh my gosh, this why we need to move here instantly. To then like, oh, okay, there is
Yeah, yeah.
this element to this as well. And then luckily we finished on an amazing comedy club, Deaf Puppies Comedy, and it was like full house, like a proper American comedy club. And I just got the whole spectrum. I did theaters, I did outdoor shows, I did open mics, I did comedy clubs, and yeah, it was great. But in hindsight, could not have gone any better. But equally, I could not have done it without the skills that I'd learnt for the whole 19 years that I've been going for. And yeah, so that in the summary, that was America, and I'm going back again next year, but this time we're going to be doing. I think there's talk of Nashville, and there's talk of New York, and there's talk of going back to Northern California as well. So yeah, so it was a real success, and they want me back, and also just being on the ground over there, knowing someone to network for you, having a touring agent, having somebody to fight for your corner, having seen you live in the different varying circumstances, and going, this person's really good. Yeah, it was a success. It definitely it wasn't a money making success, but it was definitely a networking and career success, I think.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Mate, we are at about time. Thank you so much for doing this. You've been generous with your time again. Just before we go, so I've been asking everyone this is basically in the next. I've been asking everyone in the next 5 years, but I talk to you more often than that. So I'm saying in the next sort of year and a half to 2 years, if everything sort of breaks your way, what does Nick Rado's day to day look like? Are
Oh,
you
that's
still doing the breakfast radio in Rodney?
um in a year and a half.
Oh, 2 years. Let's make it 2
Let's
years.
go 2 years. 2 years. 2 years. No. 2 years. I would have had the third album out, and I would have been back to America. I think I would have recorded another American special, and I'll be doing more theater type stuff. So I'll be doing pretty much what I'm doing now in terms of with the kids and things, and stressing about that. And still, I'll be still coaching my son's basketball team, and because
Yes.
not because I want to do it, because no one else wants to do it.
And where are
And
they sitting on the table?
they're dead last. They're in Division 4, dead last, and yeah, and
So
on
in
my
2 years, no improvement?
I feel like not at all. Like I'm not doing anything different. I've got no idea. I'm not adding anything. So unless they
They've started Division 5
yeah,
for
yeah,
your kids.
yeah. And then I've got a movie in the making as well. I feel like I've got a
Hey.
feature-length film being made as we speak in 2 years' time. So, yeah, I'm doing theaters, touring. I'm dipping in and out of America, and in 2 years' time, I'm doing my first theater in America. There we go, headlining that.
Nice. I
Mm,
like it. I like it, mate. I always love chatting to you because it's always good, positive vibes, and that no one
appreciate
makes me think that it can all work out more than chatting to you.
it.
No, but you do. Like you just like it's like you're very matter of fact. Of like, no, you can do this, and I'm like, okay,
Cheers,
like
man.
it's a good. I take a lot from it, mate. Now, if people want to see all your specials you got out and
Yeah.
follow you online, where can they find everything Nick Rado?
So if you go onto YouTube and subscribe to my channel, it's just Nick Rado Comedian, I think it is. And if you just type in Nick Rado Comedian, you'll be absolutely find me instantly. If yeah, on YouTube I've got two specials for free. You can totally watch those, and I think half of my dry bar specials up there. There's loads of clips and all sorts of stuff like that, but yeah, there's going to be more stuff I'm going to be putting out there too. So just if you just type in Nick Rado Comedian, you should find everything.
Excellent, mate. Thanks so much for doing this.
Cheers for having me.